starts with you, only you. A cosmic dance, the truth so true. From the ether to the earthly plane, all you seek, you can attain. The quantum flow, the light you hold, creates the story that will unfold. Every thought and step you make, the universe is yours to take. It starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul takes flight. The winds will shift, its timeless bend. Every cycle begins again. Your energy builds, it flows, it streams, aligning rims, igniting your dream. Each vibration, each sacred sound, a universe moves resound. You are the spark, divine and true, illuminating. It's all you do. Just remember, it starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul ignites. The path within, the path divine. Through space, your world aligned. Every rise, every fall, you're connected to it all. It starts with you, the quantum view, manifesting dreams like the morning dew. From the stillness, creation flows. Through the darkness, your spirit knows. It starts with you, only you. Through dimension, through the veil, the sacred truth, and you prevail. Now infinite, clear, and true. This road ahead, it's made for you. It all begins and ends with you. Even the chaos, through the flame, you rise anew, never the same. Every heartbeat, every sign weaves your essence, soaring high. The cosmos bends to your command. Creation blooms within your hand. It starts with you, only you, only you. It starts with you.
Welcome in the space, family. I'm trying to get my camera right. Somehow it's not positioned right and it's cutting off my head. I want to make sure it's good before we get started. Welcome into the space, family. Happy Tuesday. Still got me cut off. Hold on a second. Let me get y'all together. There we go. We in that thing. All right. Let's get us all the way together. Welcome in the space. Happy Tuesday, family. We are going to be holding space tonight. Topic tonight, America's Most Wanted. Woo! We're going to get it together in just a minute, and we're going to get into these disclosures. Y'all say hello as y'all get in the building. Let's get these disclosures on the way. I share my own experiences on my journey to healing. I am a certified life coach, and my mission is simple: to restore the knowledge of self rooted in balance, truth, justice, reciprocity, and divine knowing within me. The beautiful thing is you don't have to abandon everything that you've been taught to receive what's available. Access is already in you. Now, let me remind you of something powerful, and I quote, the works that you see me do, you can also do, and also greater works than these. And you ask, why, Ty? How can I do these? By gaining the power within yourself, by gaining the power from within. So, while you're waiting, lend me your meantime, because if you don't recognize the responsibility in this process, everything you do will be useless. So if it don't apply, let it fly. If some apply and some don't, eat the meat and spit out the bones. If it all applies, eat it all and apply the knowledge. Topic tonight again is America's Most Wanted. We're going to be here for a while, and I decided to make it my business tonight to take my time and do this thing. Like, before we get into it, we're going to have to set the intentions as we always do before we start unpacking this. So I'm going to have you take a deep breath with me. As we go on this journey of unfolding, as you breathe, notice the places in your life where you've wanted to belong, to be accepted. Notice the places in your life where you've wanted people to understand you, and recognize what it feels like to want acceptance, to be understood. Ask yourself, have you ever remained silent because speaking up would cost you something? Have you ever questioned something privately but publicly, pretended to agree? Sit with that. Because sometimes the greatest fear isn't being wrong, but being rejected, standing alone, and being misunderstood. We set the intention tonight to become more aware of those things, the things that we trade for truth and for belonging, and where we've allowed other people to tell us what to think, how to be, and how to show up in life. So tonight we enter the space willing to ask questions, to examine, willing to see, because awareness begins the moment we stop being afraid of the truth. And in this, I recognize that the truth and nothing but the truth is what I'm in search for on my journey. And whatever mine starts with me, and what's yours starts with you. Receive that, sit in it, and we say, and so it is. Hotep, welcome in. Happy Tuesday, family. We're coming here to hold some space for a night. So those of you that are new and those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Ty Timatawi, and I welcome you into the space where it starts with you, where there's no shame, blame, or judgment. However, we do hold ourselves and one another accountable. But here in this space, we do a lot of things different that you don't see a lot of probably anywhere else. You don't see things like this because we slow down enough to observe how things show up in creation. And the things that show up outside of what we've been taught, we look at those things, we examine, and we look at those things that cause us prediction errors in our lives. So come and hold space with us tonight as we expand together. And if something comes up for you while you're here, of course, put it in the chat. And if you'd rather remain anonymous, send it to my inbox and I'll hold space with it on your behalf. So let's get into it. Topic tonight, America's Most Wanted. But before we go there, I like to unpack and just recap just a little bit of where we came from last week, because we like when things connect over here. And I tell you guys all the time, if it does not connect, start questioning it. So last week we unpacked favor ain't fair. And by the end of that conversation, we should have come up with a different conclusion that favor is fair. Because we just misunderstood what favor was. If we understood what the actual origin and what it was in its origin, we would understand that it is. We discovered that favor wasn't about God liking one person more than another, or somebody has a blessing or this anointing on their life. It wasn't about money or houses or titles. Favor was relationship, knowing who you are. And I told us the greatest favor was you'll ever receive, that you have to unpack in your life, is knowledge of self. Because once a person knows who they are, they become dangerous. They stop begging. They stop chasing approval. They stop asking for permission. And they stop depending on systems to tell them their worth. And history has shown us that people who know who they are often become the very people the system wants to silence. Have you ever noticed before you can question, before you can interrogate, before they can interrogate you, before they can use your own words against you, they have to read you your rights. Think about that. Why is that? Have you ever asked those questions? The very system that's about to judge you must first acknowledge that you have rights. Now, let me ask you something. How many of us have forgotten our spiritual rights, our natural rights? Better yet, how many of you even know what your constitutional rights are? Better than we know ourselves. Listen to what they tell you. We have to pay attention and not just brush this stuff by. You have the right to remain silent. Just off of that, how many of you have spent your life speaking before you observe, speaking before you examine, speaking before you've listened? Sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is awareness and wisdom. And they tell you anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. The other asks, what truth did they violate? And that's why for you guys, Jesus kept bringing everything back to the heart. The laws are written on the heart. The kingdom is within the identity, the consciousness, because external law can regulate behavior, but it cannot transform the heart. And here's what blows my mind. Before the state questions you, it reminds you of those rights that they're supposed to give you. But before religion questions you, how often does it remind you of your freedom? Or does it begin with your guilt? Maybe that's another contradiction, Ty. Because one system says know your rights before you speak, and the other says believe first, don't question. Now, I'm not saying that every religious community is doing these things, but I'm asking you to examine what you've been given. Look at the patterns, because if the law of the land recognizes that you should understand your rights before judgment, shouldn't we understand our nature? Shouldn't we understand how creation works, our identity, our consciousness, before we surrender it to someone else's interpretation? That's why America's Most Wanted is not going to just be about a man being in handcuffs. It's about a people who have forgotten what belongs to them. Because once you forget your rights, someone else gets to define who you are and how you see yourself. Once you forget your identity, someone else names you. Once you forget your nature, someone else tells you what you are. And maybe, just maybe, the first right we lost was the right to know ourselves. Before they can judge you, they read you those words. They read you your rights. Did anyone ever teach you yours? Now I know what you're thinking. What's my rights, Ty? You talking about these rights we're talking about? Do you even know them? Absolutely, I do. Now I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly what we're unpacking tonight. What are our natural rights that we should have here? And we might be here for a while. And I gave myself permission because somewhere along the line, you've been taught what the Constitution says your rights are. If you weren't taught at all, but nobody taught you your rights of your nature, what belongs to you, your right to think for yourself, to question, to examine, to seek understanding, your right to be in balance, your right to remember who you are. Now, let me ask you something. What rights did religion teach you had? To believe, to worship, to pray, to wait, to obey? What about to hope? He taught us that too. But what happened when you question? What happened when you disagreed? What happened when you interpreted the text differently than what they gave to you? That's when your belonging becomes conditional. That's when you were called rebellious, right? A false teacher. Now hear me. In the legal system, when you're accused of violating the law, your freedom can be restricted in religion. The same thing happens, can send you to hell, according to the text. Does that not sound familiar? Listen, the text says, let every soul be subject unto the higher power. The powers that be are ordained of God. And many of you have interpreted that to mean don't question that authority. Obey the governing powers, when that's not what it means. They give us this and then have us living by these things that are not even, they're not even interpreted right. Not even recognizing how psychologically, how powerful it becomes. If I believe questioning authority is the same as questioning God, I may never question the system. And that's the goal. Who benefits from that? Who wrote these interpretations? And does it produce justice? I won't ask. Family, that's why Jesus becomes so important to these conversations when Ty gets in here and unpack these things. Because according to the gospel and these narratives and these allegories, he repeatedly questioned these interpretations of these religious authorities. He asked them, have you not read it? He challenged, he exposed them. He wasn't afraid to examine what everyone else accepted. And that's why America's Most Wanted isn't just about a man on trial. It's about what happens when someone exercises the courage to think instead of to conform. And tonight I pose, maybe your greatest right isn't simply the freedom to speak. Maybe it's the freedom to examine. Because the moment you stop examining, someone else begins thinking for you. And that's where it starts. It starts with you. And we're unpacking all of those things tonight. And we're going to let those things marinate because it isn't how it's supposed to show up. That's how religion has been showing up in our lives for centuries. It teaches you to confess, then tells you you're guilty. Just being born into a world of sin, or however y'all want to twist it to make the narrative fit your fantasy. It teaches you that you're broken. And then it sells you the cure. It sells you the treatment, not even the cure. It teaches you that you're unworthy. Then tells you to spend your life trying to become worthy. And it's sending you on this mission that you can't possibly achieve. And your own words become evidence against you. Then they tell you you're in the law. You have the right to an attorney when you're there. Why? Because they know you shouldn't stand before judgment without representation. Now ask yourself, who has been representing your mind? Your pastor? Your fear? Or your own experiences? Are you examining these things for yourself? Listen, according to my aunt, the highest court wasn't simply about rules. It was about truth and balance. It was about whether your heart was lighter than a feather. Notice my aunt doesn't and won't ask you what denomination you are. Those are the first questions people walk up on you. What? Are you Baptist? Do you go to church? But my aunt asks, how did you live? Did you preserve balance? Or did you do that thing unlawfully? That's a different courtroom. Which brings us to tonight's topic. America's Most Wanted. Because according to your book of magic, the moment Jesus knew who he was, he stopped asking religious leaders for permission. That's Bible. That's how it shows up. He stopped asking the Pharisees to validate him. He stopped asking the scribes to approve him. He was about his Father's business, according to him. And the moment he began exposing contradiction, he became a threat. Ty, how do you know that? How can you sit there and say Jesus wasn't looking for validation? How do you know what he wasn't trying to win over, that he wasn't trying to win over the Pharisees? How do you know he wasn't trying to get the scribes to approve of him? Simple. Because I read it. Because I stopped relying on what somebody told me about this book and what somebody told them about this book, and I started reading it for myself. Family, at some point, you have to become responsible for your own awareness, and they've already told you that they're not responsible for you. I heard them say it. And you have to stop borrowing somebody else's understanding. You're borrowing somebody's life's experiences, their trauma, their attachment style, right along with it. Start knowing for yourself. So let me show you, because this is not Ty's opinion. Are you aware? When Jesus was 12 years old, he was lost for 3 days. And now when I say these things and I go through these allegories, this is only to demonstrate a point, not as if it really existed. I'm actually unpacking this so we can understand the foundation of where this goes from and how we can see this in your life. So Ty's going to make this thing connect for us. And I've never heard y'all tell this story. So tonight I'm going to unpack it. And I wonder why I've never heard y'all say this. Put it in the chat if you know. The brother was missing for 3 days. And I'm going to give you these books. Because if you're not curious about anything, you can have all the books that you want. If you're not willing to understand and gain the knowledge and be open to learn, you can have the books. So Jesus was traveling with his parents to Jerusalem for Passover. Now, I've broken down the Passover before and how it works. Go into my YouTube and brush up on that. If you want to get the knowledge on how it's supposed to work, I can say go back down that timeline now. But anyway, there was this feast for Passover. And after the feast, they packed up and they, Mary and Joseph, they assumed that, Jesus had, linked up with his relatives, his cousin and his aunties and them, and that he caught the caravan with the family. So they went on their way. And as they were going back to the destination, they realized that he was missing a day into this journey. So after they realized that he ain't nowhere and they done checked, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. And after 3 days, they found him. Look, it says, and it came to pass that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. You know how they tell you you're not supposed to ask questions? Contradiction. So Mary asked him, son, why you got us out here, in these streets looking for you? Where you been? We've been worried to death. And you know what he told them? Why are you looking for me? I'm minding my Father's business. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It don't say that, Ty. It reads, son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. Meaning they was out here crying because they didn't know where in the world to find him. And he responded, he checked them on the spot. I don't understand why. It says, how is it that ye sought me, whence ye are not, that I must be about my Father's business? Don't you know that I'm minding my business? Y'all be playing too much in these streets. And that's the moment he discovered who he was. And because of that, when the Pharisees and the scribe questioned him moving forward, he didn't apologize for a thing. Let me tell you guys something. And I'm saying this with everything in me. If a man, ladies, if a man can check his mama, fellas, if a woman can check her parents, they can check anybody. And I'm not telling you something I heard. I know because I experienced it. But that's a teaching for another time. I'll maybe go there later. But a person who knows who they are don't need strangers to tell them who they are. So at 12 years old, this brother knew who he was. And I asked myself, why 12, Ty? Now your text never tells you why the age of 12 was so important. It was the beginning of a boy taking responsibility for a covenant and the law. He was at that age because within a year, being a 13 in the Jewish tradition, he would be recognized as being responsible for these commandments and these laws that were being passed along to him. In other words, he was no longer being carried by his parents' understanding. He could rely on his own understanding at that time, according to the Jewish laws. Nobody ever explained things like that to us, at least not to me. All they used to tell us back in the day, I'm going to change that. Let me say me, because I can't speak for nobody else. I don't know if it was explained to you or not, but they gave us that. All I've ever heard any of them say is that babies and young kids, if they're under 12, they automatically go to heaven. And now I know where that foolishness came from. That Jewish tradition. And we're not even Jewish, and we're still passing around these lies. Y'all better start knowing for yourself, because it don't make sense. But anyway, according to that, Jesus knew. He came into the knowing. So what if one of the greatest responsibilities of you while you're in your childhood is learning who you are? What do you want to be when you grow up? That's how they give it to us. And I'm asking you, who are you? Not who your parents decide that you should be, or society or religion tells you to be, but discovering your own nature. Because a child who knows is much harder to manipulate. This is facts. I've seen it. What does it say? It says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when he get old, they will not depart from it. What? I love it over here because it connects, and it makes so much sense when I unpack these things and I learn it for myself. Why do people fight so hard for your children? Because whoever shapes a child's mind early often shapes the adult that they become later on in life. If you teach a child what to fear, what to worship, what to question, and what never to question, those patterns can follow them their entire life. That's why tonight I'm asking you to examine not what you believe, but what you were taught to believe. I'm jamming in here, y'all. Examine everything. We should start being insecure about the things that we were given. And I'm an advocate for that. And they start giving you the answers to everything. When does your discernment develop? When do you become aware? Which brings us to tonight. Family, when you hear that phrase, America's Most Wanted, what comes to mind? Not pause, because every society decides who its threats are. And guess who and what society has decided is the number one threat? The Black man and the Black woman, in that order. And the question is, who got to decide? Power doesn't just operate through one institution. It operates through those nine pillars, through those systems. They decide that in those things, if a system reaches into every area of life, entertainment, sex, law, education, labor, economics, war, and religion. Give me a second, family. I forgot to do something. Let me fix this real quick. Let me fix this real quick. Hold on a second. I forgot to do this before. There on TikTok, I'm going to be right back in. Hold on, y'all. I got to fix this. Welcome in the space. Happy Tuesday. We had to fix something real quick. Let me make sure that I got it right, because I see what was happening. Why would I? Y'all come in and vibe with us for a minute. Topic tonight: America's Most Wanted. There we go. We're going to get back in that thing. We don't let anything stop us. So come back in TikTok. Y'all come hold space with us tonight. We unpacking the topic of America's Most Wanted. So we were talking about those 9 pillars. That's where we left off. Then it also has the power to determine, who is respectable. Welcome in, y'all. I didn't recognize that I didn't have everything turned on properly. So welcome in. For those of you that are new coming in, my name is Tyson Matawi. So y'all come in and hold space and put in the chat where you're tuning in from. Welcome in. They don't recognize who's dangerous, who's righteous, and who is rebellious. In other words, who belongs and who doesn't. Now stay with me, because we know that, doesn't work in our minds and our nervous system. We should know, at least, tuning in and holding space with Ty. We should know that our nervous system does this thing. Why, Ty? Because your nervous system wants certainty. It wants to know that it knows. The body wants belonging. And the moment something challenges what we've attached our identity to, our bodies react, because the body experiences challenges to the identity as a threat, because it threatens what we've become attached to from children. That's dangerous. That's dangerous because truth rearranges things. Truth disrupts comfortable lies and contradictions. It will force us to examine what we've been protecting. And I'm going to put us on game tonight. The people who take balance seriously, the people who refuse to conform, the people who challenge narratives, the people who expose contradictions have historically been labeled as America's Most Wanted. Think about that. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, we make up 14% of the population, but we account for 1/3 of the prison population. So we are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of YT people. Family, those are not Ty's numbers. Go and look it up. And before you get emotional and get all in your feels, I'm not telling you what conclusions to draw. I'm asking you to examine what is in front of us. We have to look at these patterns. Our responsibility isn't to defend it. Our responsibility is to investigate it and go from there. There isn't a statistic that says we have a natural tendency to conform to the group. We tend to trust authority. We protect the beliefs we've invested in the identity in. We defend those systems that give us a sense of belonging. And when somebody or someone else exposes a contradiction in those systems, our first response isn't usually curiosity. We're not curious about anything. And I don't understand that. It's resistance, it's defensiveness, it's rejection. And sometimes it's punishment. Different generations, yet they all point to the same point. The topic tonight is America's Most Wanted. The phrase itself already tells your nervous system when Ty says that, how to feel. You immediately picture a fugitive. Now let me ask you something. Who taught your nervous system that? Who taught you that once someone is arrested, that they automatically are the bad guy? Who taught you that once the authorities label someone as a criminal, that the case is closed? That's taught behavior, whether direct or indirectly. It's passed down from our ancestors. Who got to decide who's dangerous? Who gave us these narratives that we hold on to with dear life? But according to the gospel story, the man billions of people call Savior was arrested. They took him into custody, stood trial and convicted him, and sentenced to unlive him via crucifixion. But yet you don't see that is dangerous. We have to sit with some of these things. Welcome in, family. Y'all share the live. Come in and hold space with us tonight. That same Jesus that you sing about, that you pray about, that you say you love, the same Jesus you call King, was a convicted man, according to the legal and the religious authorities of that day. Now, here's the question. Why do we think of him that way? Why don't we look at him as a criminal like we do other people? Why doesn't your mind picture him when we hear Most Wanted, when we hear convict or prisoner, man on unalive row? I don't think I could say the D word. Why? Because religion has conditioned you to skip over that part of the story. It conditions you to rush to the cross, rush to the empty tomb, to the resurrection, because they know those chemicals and hormones that show up in your body when you think of that shows up. But we rarely sit with the courtroom. What was his crime, Ty? Who accused him? Who testified against him? Who benefited from his conviction? That's what we're unpacking tonight. Because if a man you call the Son of God could be arrested and condemned and executed by a people convinced that they were serving and doing God a service like y'all do today, then maybe the story isn't just about Jesus. Maybe it's holding up a mirror and asking you, how often do we assume that because a system labels someone dangerous that they actually are? That's why tonight teaching is called America's Most Wanted, because before Jesus became the most worshiped man in history, according to the gospel, he was the most wanted. and still the most wanted man by the religious and the political authorities. And if we can miss that contradiction, what other contradictions are we missing today? Sometimes it's happened rightly, but we have to look at these patterns. And I'm going to give y'all some hypotheses tonight. And we're going to take our time and do it. Don't jump to conclusions. I want you guys to sit with these things and just ask yourself these questions, because they are really powerful questions. Y'all want them all the time. Y'all just get joy when you think about them, Christians. Muslims tend to honor him. You pray to him. You worship him. People build churches in his name. You sing songs about him. You just get excited when you think about it. You confess your love even though you haven't met him. You fans and you don't even know it. And I don't believe you're telling the truth. How you gonna tell me I don't love God? I remember the song, "Do you love God? How about you? I love God." I don't believe you. And I don't. Because you can't even love your brother that you see every day. So how Ty, this is how Ty can tell that you ain't about what you're talking about. Because I see it in your fruit. But anyway, everybody wants this Jesus. And here's the crazy part. I know, what some of y'all are thinking, but Jesus was innocent. He was wrongly accused. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Okay, for shits and giggles, let's entertain it. Let's explore that. Because if that's true, let's slow down and think about it. How many people right now today sitting in jail right now will tell you the same thing? I'm innocent. And y'all won't even believe them. How many people would tell you that the system got it wrong? The punishment don't fit the crime. What did it say? If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Right now today, we have a 19-year-old, I won't say boy, sitting in an adult prison for operating in his ma'at, in his balance. Y'all praying to the same God. Family, whether they are right or wrong isn't even the point. My point is most people believe justice exists when it benefits them. But the moment the law gets applied to somebody they love, now they want mercy and understanding. Now they want, they want grace and context. And they want us to look deeper. The hypocrisy in that. If somebody stole something from you, you want them to be accountable. If somebody harms your family, you want them to stand accountable. If somebody violates the law against you, you want accountability. Yet when it comes to Jesus, suddenly everybody says the law was wrong. He don't need accountability. The math ain't mathing, family. According to the story, the people who condemned him believed that he was doing the wrong thing. They believed that they were right in accusing him and convicted him. The people they accused him. They believed that they were protecting the truth. The people who sentenced him believed that they were defending God. And that's what makes the story so terrifying, because the people enforcing the law believed that they were righteous, carrying out justice. Don't that sound familiar? Because every generation has people who believe the system is just, while other people experience the system very differently. And that's where the contradiction lies. It says that you can't be lukewarm. You have to be either in or out. It don't give you no middle ground. It doesn't give you a balance. It doesn't give you that for a reason. And that's not me defending nobody in jail that's rightfully there. That's not me saying every conviction is wrong. I'm saying that the story forces us to start asking some questions. We need to be asking questions about this system that is out of alignment with our nature. That's why. If that's correct, Ty, How do we know when the law is serving justice and when justice is serving the law? Because according to the story, family, it's legality and justice. Are you not always, the same thing? Just because something is legal doesn't make it just. Just because something is just doesn't make it illegal. And it doesn't automatically make it unjust either. History has shown us that. Welcome in, family. In the Kemetic tradition, the highest standard wasn't simply, did you break the rule? The question was, did your actions preserve balance? Did you do so unlawfully? What were your intentions? And you couldn't lie about it because they could see it. If you lied, because it produced life, whether it produced life or unalive, I can't say the D word. Welcome in. That's why they call it negative confessions. You don't find statements like that. I did not unalive them. You find ideas that emphasize justice and right conduct, often interpreted as committing wrongful acts, not causing unnecessary harm, not stealing, not bearing false witness, and not disturbing balance unlawfully. That's a different way of thinking. One is going to ask you, what law did you violate? And the other, in Ma'at, is going to ask you, what balance did you disturb? Those are not the same. So what if many of us keep finding ourselves in conflict? Because we're trying to live by a system that teaches external obedience without first teaching internal balance. Then we should know, what if we were taught to fear punishment instead of understanding consequence? What if we've become so focused on rules that we've forgotten about relationships with ourselves, relationship with one another, relationships with nature? And that's what Jesus in the allegory was exposing to them. Look, he says, what is the Sabbath for? Who does the law serve? Was the law created for humanity, or was humanity created for the law? When he heals on the Sabbath, he isn't simply breaking a rule. He's forcing everyone to ask question, what is the purpose of this rule to begin with? Because if the rule causes you to ignore a suffering of another human, if this rule, welcome in, family, becomes more important than justice, that's where you find yourself today. And that's where many of us find ourselves psychologically. When you grow up in a system that repeatedly conflicts with your lived experience, your nervous system begins to adapt to a contradiction. Those contradictions that show up when you get those errors, those prediction errors, you normalize that imbalance. You learn to survive instead of align. You obey instead of examining. And over time, breaking the rules can become less about being bad and more about living in conflict with the system that never feels coherent to your nervous system. Hear me carefully. That doesn't justify harming people. It doesn't justify violence. It doesn't justify exploitation, unlawfully, that is. But it does invite us to ask, if the law is consistently producing injustice, is the problem always the people? Or should we start examining the laws and the system that they're giving us? Should we start examining those things? Absolutely. And those are the things that they wrestle with in the biblical text. At that time, that's why, according to the story, America's Most Wanted wasn't simply on trial. The system wasn't itself being put on trial. It says, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And tonight, that's what we're examining. For the record, this didn't happen. I'm not saying this happened. but we're unpacking it. The most infamous convict in human history was convicted by people just like you who thought they were right. And the part of religion that y'all won't take accountability for. Ty, that wasn't us. This is where the conversation gets really uncomfortable. Because tonight, we're not examining whether Jesus was innocent. I hope y'all can see this. We're examining what the accusations were. We're examining the laws, the charges. We're examining why America's Most Wanted became a convict in the first place. Don't get in your emotions, because your emotions won't have you thinking logically. Because we need to hear these things. Jesus wasn't arrested for stealing. He wasn't arrested, for unaliving anybody, for assaulting or robbing. He wasn't arrested for fraud. The accusation centered around something else. What was the accusation, Ty? He challenged them in their temple practices. He worked on the Sabbath. Just like when Ty started saying, I don't know if I believe that. It don't sound right to me. When Ty started saying things like that, he was doing that. He was challenging what y'all still do in church right now today. He questioned those traditions. He was disrupting the religious order. Those were serious accusations according to the people making them at that time. And that's important to know. They were wrong. They missed the truth. Okay. But let me explain why this matters psychologically, because this is where your prediction error shows up. And for those people in the back, prediction error happens when what you expect to happen doesn't actually match what happens. You were told if God's with you, you'll be accepted. If you're righteous, people will support you. If you're telling the truth, people will listen. If you're doing God's work, you'll be protected. And that don't happen. When it don't happen, but then you read the story and the exact opposite starts showing up. It starts happening. The man everybody says was sent by God, arrested. The man everybody says was righteous, convicted. The man everybody says was telling the truth, executed. That was a prediction error for them. The Levite said, it's okay if you be the king, but you can't, we don't want you over here doing no priestly things. You supposed to, when you was over there doing your thing, okay, cool, you could do that. But now you're coming over here trying to mess with what's going on in the temple. And all because the outcome didn't match what they expected it to be. Welcome in, family. Y'all share the live. Come in and hold space with us tonight. And their minds start trying to explain away these contradictions, trying to figure out a way to make it make sense to their nervous system. So what did they do? They tried to rationalize it. And what do? You'll try to rationalize it. You'll try to skip over anything except sitting with what's actually showing up. Those lawyers, those scholars, the scribes, the Pharisees, the gatekeepers, the interpreters, the experts, all thought that they were right. Family, let's stop acting. Thank you for sharing that. Peace. Who is that? Charlie Thompson, thanks you for sharing that. Welcome in. Every generation has Pharisees and scribes. The name just changed it, but the psychology stays the same. The Pharisees were the religious authorities, the people telling everybody else what God meant. This because they didn't have access to this information at that time. They weren't privy to get the books like y'all are. The people deciding what would be accepted, who was righteous, who was a sinner. The scribes were the scholars. The lawyers, the interpreters, the experts in religious law, the ones who could quote the text, the ones who could control the narratives. Family, who are they today? Pastors, the bishops, the apostles, the theologians, the lawyers, the scholars, the religious influencers, the gatekeepers, the judges, the lawyers, anybody who believes that they have authority to tell everybody, the police. They think they have the authority to tell everybody else what the law of the land is or what it's supposed to look like. Whatever you're calling yourself today, put your name on it if you think you're in authority and you have this privilege or this authority over somebody else. You have the right to determine what happens in somebody else's life. That's what we're talking about tonight. Y'all take this job so lightly and don't want to hold yourselves accountable. You are one of them. Hear me carefully. Knowledge, education, and authority are not the only problem. The problem begins when protecting the institution becomes more important than the truth. That's exactly what happened. Jesus wasn't threatening God. He was threatening the interpretation that they tried to make and the rules and regulations that they had within their carnal minds. He was threatening the system that defined itself as righteous. He was threatening the corruption. That's why they refused to hear him. Because once your identity becomes attached to being right, every challenge feels like an attack. It feels like a contradiction. And it's dangerous. And that's exactly what prediction era is designed to do. Because their expectation was God works through us. He speaks through us. God validates that and confirms us. Then somebody shows up exposing these contradictions. Ty shows up and she calls y'all on y'all shit. You just said this, but what about this? Questioning those traditions that y'all are misusing. Question those things that y'all quote the scripture on when that ain't even what they mean. That ain't even what the original meaning of that word is. They translated it from another language, and that's not how it even translates. This brother was eating with the people they considered unclean, and suddenly the outcome didn't match what they expected. And the same thing happens today when the preacher doesn't look like a preacher. When wisdom comes from outside of the church, God forbid truth comes up from an unexpected place, or something comes from somebody you don't want to hear it from. Your nervous system, your ego is getting all in the way. The institution react. Come from amongst them, they say. Don't associate with them because they are hypocritical. Those are people, don't listen. The person that y'all saying that y'all have so much regard for, he wasn't around them. He was hanging amongst the people that were sick. He says, listen, he says, it is he that is sick that needs the physician, not he that is whole. Because the challenge is not just the belief. The challenge is the identity built around that belief. That's why America's Most Wanted became America's Most Dangerous. He wasn't harming anybody, all because he was exposing the contradictions, and the people who benefited from those contradictions couldn't afford to let him continue to go on with what he was doing. I love it over here, Ty. Me too. Welcome in the space, family. What if the issue wasn't simply Jesus? What if the issue was what Jesus represented? Because every time he showed up, he was exposing and calling out their shit. Every time he opened his mouth, he was exposing the hypocrisy. Every time he asked a question, he was exposing a gap between what the people claimed to believe and what they actually were. People can tolerate wrongdoing, corruption, and hypocrisy. What they struggle to tolerate is exposure, because exposure threatens their religion. It threatens the story you tell yourself. And before y'all say tonight, Jesus was innocent, not according to the law at that time, Before y'all call the crowd right, let's examine these charges. Let's examine the law. Let's examine the accusation, because if the accusations were based upon accepted religious interpretations of that day, all that time, then we have to ask, what Jesus, what was he really, what rules was he really breaking? Was he violating their tradition? Was he disrupting their authority? Because family, if the answer is yes, Houston, we have a problem. And we need to ask more questions. Why did they arrest him? Maybe the deeper question is, why did they feel they needed to? A man who kept challenging the very people who claimed to speak for God. And every time he did, they applied pressure until eventually the most wanted man in the story became the most famous convict in history. I'm talking about his story, not our story. I'm talking about the story that they fed you and told you that this is history. That's what we're unpacking tonight. You have to pick a side. Ty, that's something that happened back then. No, that's the mistake. If you believe it happened, you can't cherry pick what you want out of it. Because whether you see these as stories, as history, as allegory, as metaphors, as spiritual instruction, the pattern is still happening right now today. The names, these faces, the institutions change, but the psychology, the story isn't important because of when it happened. It's important because of where it's happening. Where is it happening, Ty? Family, it's happening in you. It's happening in our communities. It's happening in the courtrooms. It's happening in our churches. It's happening in politics. It's happening in your home. It's happening in your schools. It's happening every time people choose the comfort of the system over the discomfort of the truth. Our challenges, what you've been attached to. The same thing shows up, that defensiveness, that resistance, that condemnation, that punishment, that exclusion. And we wonder why the stories keep repeating, why you keep having the same experience week after week, year after year, person after person, relationship after relationship. We wonder why we keep going through these things. The story was never trying to tell you only what happened to Jesus. The story is showing you what happens whenever truth confronts power, whenever awareness confronts conditioning, whenever a person refuses to bow to a system that benefits from their silence. The story is trying to tell you what's showing up in your life. And that's important because the same people praying for justice are the same people participating in the injustice. The same people quoting scripture are the same people missing the message and misinterpreting those scripture to you. And the same one missing the message are the same people claiming to follow the Savior. These are the same people condemning what the Savior stood for. And according to the story, that's exactly what happened. You should have so many questions. Welcome in, welcome in. And because you can't ask, I'll ask for you. If you're afraid to ask, I'll ask it for you. Put it in the chat. Send it to my inbox. It's my pleasure. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I know from experience that I've asked questions. I was afraid at one time, but now I'm not. What if the greatest power of religion isn't it gives people answers? Let me see. Thank you for sharing that, Wayne. I hope I did that right. What if the greatest power of religion is it gives you hope? Now, before y'all get mad, stay with me. Because hope isn't always bad. Hope can keep you alive. It can keep you moving. It also can help you survive. But it can also become a trap as well. Especially when hope keeps replacing examination. Why is that, Ty? Because the nervous system is always trying to return to homeostasis. I unpacked that last week. Your nervous system is always trying to show up and go back to what's familiar. Even if what's familiar is hurting you. And I know many of us think homeostasis is supposed to be healthy. Remember, Todd tells you duality is anything. So if you can go forward, you can go backwards. Where there's hot, there's cold. Where there's good, there's bad. There's always going to be duality in everything. So no, homeostasis, it doesn't have to be healthy. It just means familiar. And trauma can be familiar. Disappointment can be familiar. Waiting can be familiar. Suffering can be familiar. And being overlooked can be familiar to religion. This is why you've been able to remain inside those cycles for decades. And I want to say it like Moses, in the wilderness for decades. That's why you can sit around and keep doing the same thing and expecting something different, because I'm waiting. They told me if I wait, you told me if I pray that I can stay here. Not because the cycle is good, not because the cycle is known. Now watch how it works. You prayed, you believed, you expected, you spoke things out as they were, and then the outcome doesn't happen. There goes a prediction error. Now what happens? What should happen? Examination, question, reflection, awareness. What happens instead? Religion gives you another dose of hope. Just believe and stay a little bit longer. Your blessing is coming. God is testing you. He has a better plan for you. It wasn't your time. And before you know it, the prediction error gets covered up by another layer of hope. Then the cycle repeats. Expectation, disappointment, exploitation, explanation, and hope. Then all over again, expectation, disappointment, explanation, hope. Family, that's how cycles survive. Because every time your reality challenges the belief creates another explanation. This is why y'all can get on and be on those deconstructors live for hours, going back and forward about shit that don't even matter. It's because your mind has been trained through this religious construct. It's been trained to seek what's familiar. Uncertainty is not familiar. So now my cortisol and now my chemical, and I'm just in balance all up and through here, and the body keeps a score. And I need to return to this homeostasis. So I'm going to argue it until I can't argue it no more. And now, because I feel good and I stood on business, the nervous system gets to avoid that discomfort of sitting with those contradictions that show up in what somebody is bringing into my awareness. Hear me carefully. Systems like religion survive when they can explain away the contradictions. And religion is very good at giving you reasons to keep waiting. Very good at giving people reasons to keep enduring. It's very good at helping people make meaning out of their suffering. Making a way out of no way is what y'all say. But here's the danger. If every disappointment becomes another reason to believe harder, then when do you stop and examine that system? How many disappointments will you need? How many disappointments will you need? How many times do you need to be told no? How many prayers do you need to say, maybe I didn't pray hard enough? How many times? When do you stop to ask, is this producing what it promised me to do? It says if I ask in your name that it's supposed to show up for me. Is it producing that? Is it creating balance? That's why America's Most Wanted was dangerous, because according to his story, 2 separate words, not history, his story, the story that they gave y'all. He wouldn't let people hide behind the explanation. He kept bringing people back to the fruit, to the evidence, to the contradictions, back to what was actually being produced. And that's why those religious authorities became so uncomfortable. Think about it. The mindset hasn't changed. It's the same question they asked. And it's the same questions being asked now. If we let the brother get away with defending himself, this is what they telling y'all. If we let this brother, this young brother, get away with defending himself, what message are we sending to the otherings? That's what they think of you. They call you the otherings because they believe that they're superior. What is that going to teach the other ones? And the moment you realize that you have the power to defend yourself, to think for yourself, to challenge the narrative, the system begins to lose its grip, and they know that. That's what was happening on those plantations because those people knew who they were when they brought them here. So they kept running away. They knew. That's why I read that Willie Lynch letter a while back because they were breaking bucks and they were breaking slaves. They see it as similar. The goal is the same. It's to stop you from fighting back. It's about changing the way you think. If I can make you afraid of the consequences of standing up for yourself, you'll stay quiet without being forced to. You'll retreat and go on about your business without standing your ground. And once fear gets in the mind, control becomes easier because you won't have to be police because you'll police yourself. Today, the plantation doesn't have to be made of cotton fields. They don't have to do it that way anymore. They put it on your television and they tell you the vision that they want you to see. They let you stream it on your phone. They make public examples out of our people. You watch someone stand up and defend themselves or refuse to comply. We're going to show you. And then you watch what happens to them. And I know y'all think it's harmless. It's not. Your brain records those images. Long before you ever you find yourself in that situation. So when that moment shows up for you, even if you're simply trying to protect your own life, your nervous system recalls the consequences before your mouth ever opens. I can't do that. Look at what happened to Brother Ali over there. Look what happened to Brother Malcolm. Look what happened to Brother Anthony. That's how conditioning works. Same strategy, different century. Listen, they would tie our men, each leg of them. They would stretch them out, one tied to this horse, one tied to a horse over here. And they would split them wide open, hit the horse, make one go that way and the other go that way, and make y'all watch. Make your ancestor watch. Exposure has always been the enemy of the system, built to control you. And exposure threatens the story. It threatens the identity they've trained you to wear. And yes, oh ye pastors are complicit in maintaining that system. Family, if your pastor or your bishop or your prophetess or whatever clever name they're coming up with these days, who knows? If they've attended any type of Bible college or theological institute, they've been exposed to the history of this information surrounding the formation of religious traditions and where it originated from. But they teach it to you a whole different way. They continue teaching you to submit without teaching you how to discern and how discernment actually works in your body. In doing so, they are the Pharisees and the scribes of our time. And like every institution built on hierarchy, they have incentives for protecting the systems they feed. They take oaths. When preserving the institution becomes more important than awakening your own people, you shouldn't want no parts of it. Their leadership it has shifted from liberation to managing people. Have y'all ever noticed when things pop off in our community, who they go get first? Just go back. Just do the research. Who they go get first when something pop off, when the riots pop off, or when something happen, when we want to protest, they go get the pastors and the preachers and whatever they calling themselves these days. Because they know at that point, the institution no longer teaches you how to think. It teaches you how to stay within the boundaries that they've established. And they know that in our community, oftentimes that's the person that we respect the most. So go get him. Now, let me ask you a question. Why do y'all think Jesus had so many problems with the religious leaders? Because he wasn't fighting sinners. He was fighting a system that had become more concerned about with controlling people than connecting them to God. That's why every time he showed up, he was in conflict with the religious establishment. They had turned Jesus's house into an institution. They turned relationship into religion. They turned freedom into rule. They turned the law into weapons instead of a mirror. And he kept exposing what they had become. He knew that religion had become more important. They had lost God while claiming to represent him. That's why he said they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are so far from me. Y'all were called hypocrites. That's why he was flipping over y'all tables. I can't wait till Jesus Jr. If it is real, I can't wait till Jesus Jr. come back over here and start flipping over y'all tables, because it ain't me that he coming for. Because he in love with the backslider, according to y'all. He wasn't just flipping over y'all furniture for nothing. He was turning over a system that kept people spiritually dependent instead of spiritually aware. He didn't come to make better religious people. He came to wake people up that the kingdom of God was within. You're trapped because faith has become a substitution for examination. And when faith becomes a substitution for examination, you spend your whole life waiting for liberation instead of recognizing that liberation begins the moment you start asking questions. The moment you start examining things, knowing for yourself. I'm going to share. I was watching this video earlier today. Welcome in, family. Happy Tuesday. I'm making good time. I may have to go pee in a minute. I may have to put y'all on hold for a second, but try to get as far as I can. But I was watching this video earlier today, and it was filmed in 1968, and it was a YT man and a woman. The interviewer was a black man that was interviewing him, and he started, the video was about life on the plantation. He started saying how happy the white man, the black guy asked him, I hope I can say that on here. There's so many restrictions. The black gentleman, the black brother asked the YT guy, what was life like on the plantation? This was 1968 now. So keep in mind, this is just a little bit after. And he started saying how happy we were. Him and this lady, YT lady, was saying how happy we was because we had less material things, and how back then, before we got the rights, we would be out there singing and just in the sun, and we had these good sense of humor. And if we had or ran into any issues, we would just go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning. Everything was brand new and everything would be okay. But when questioned about that, he said they needed time to get over how they were seeing us as less than human beings. And the gentleman asked him, well, what were you seeing us as? He's seen us as superior pets. They seen us as pretty much an elevated pet, like a conscious pet, a smart pet. someone that they had to take care of, and they had to think for them. This is what they were thinking of us. And I don't understand. And I'm just, for the life of me, I just try to be open-minded to see, why is it that we don't want to think for ourselves? This is what they think of us. The moment you stop giving your power away and waiting for somebody else to save you or think for you, you can ask these hard questions. Are you okay with them saying that to you? Never teaching you how to fish because they want to control how much you can fish, how much you're going to eat. If you're going to get too many fish, if you learn how to fish for yourself and not need them anymore. That's the system that you're subscribed to. Because I'm not claiming it. I ain't subscribed to it. Now, I have some of the still mannerisms in my nervous system that I'm working on getting rid of, but I don't subscribe for that. I want to learn how to fish so I can learn how to go get it myself. I want to learn how to fish so I can do the work myself. That's the system you're subscribing to right now. What is that tie? A system that keeps you dependent forever. You should at least ask who benefits from that system of dependency. They benefit from it. And that's exactly what kind of questions America's Most Wanted kept asking them at that time. Who is benefiting from you doing this? Who is benefiting from you collecting these tithes and offerings? Who is benefiting from you keeping all the good fruit while you giving all the bad stuff? Who is benefiting from you supposed to be collecting these tithes and offerings for the widows and the children, the orphanage? Who is benefiting from this when you're not doing that? And I ask you pastors now today, I guarantee you, put it in the chat. Who benefits from what you're doing? Don't put you. He said, instead of fishing for you, thinking for you, I'm going to teach you how to fish. I'm going to teach you how to be the fisherman amongst men. So that you can do it for yourself, so that we can examine these things. Jesus was the one in chain. He was the freedom fighter. He was the Malcolm X of his time, whether y'all want to believe it or not. Family, sit with that, because for everybody that loves him now, why do they want him gone? If everybody praise him now, why was he the threat at that time? And maybe the answer is uncomfortable. Maybe America's Most Wanted was dangerous because he exposed the contradictions. And every system built on contradictions eventually has to decide what to do with the person who points their shit out, who raises up their skirt. Now, here's a question. That narrative that you've been given, Jesus was a jailbird. I know y'all don't like when Ty say stuff like that. Not only that, according to the text, I know why. I know why some, men love to be in jail. They love that Philadelphia love, and they go there on purpose oftentimes. Don't get offended. Jesus had a different type of love for them brothers that he was mobbing around with, those 12. There was something strange. There was some strange things going on. I may do a teaching on that soon, about what Jesus was doing. And they hid from y'all, and they don't tell you. They don't preach that. They ain't gonna tell you what he was doing and what they translated he was doing. I might do a teaching on that. But they knew y'all wouldn't read it. They knew the pattern they gave the preacher. Back then, they gonna read it for them. They ain't gonna even go and look and read it or interpret it themselves. They're not even gonna think about, we translated this into English, and when we translate it in language, what it means in Spanish ain't the same thing it means in English. What it means in Greek ain't the same thing that it means in English. So when they translate it, let's change it to what we want it to be. Welcome in, family. If both the oppressor and the oppressed prayed for the same, I was just about to get to that in a minute. Come on, who is that? Lorenzo, shout out to you, brother. They can only give you specific verses and scripture. That was the goal. Only give them specific ones. And right now, y'all still doing the same shit. Y'all still doing the same shit. He got up early Same. I go there and I tunes in to say to y'all. So y'all think I don't be looking. I be watching because I need to know what information I need to make sure that I am aware of and that I'm still duped on, that I need to be growing and learning and being open to expand. Same thing. They understood the assignment. They knew how this worked. And I can't even say they hid it because it's in the books. And I could give y'all the books all day. And I know this to be true because Dr. Simatawi, excuse me, as much as I be reading and trying to gain understanding, let me tell you, if you don't really pay attention to this stuff and really know for yourself and look up what these words mean and what the origin of these words, we need to go back to the basics, family. That's point blank period. We got to go back to the basics and start learning back to kindergarten to learn what these words mean. Because let me tell you something. These words don't mean what y'all think they do. I might just do a teaching on that. What Jesus was doing with them brothers, he wasn't just hanging with them. But anyway, let me say it again. Jesus was a convict. He was arrested. He tried and sentenced and executed. He was on unalive row. And I mean DEATH row. And the question is why? What are you saying, Ty? Right? The etymology of the words. Peace. Peace, Mr. Lorenzo. Peace, King. Now, I know some of y'all get uncomfortable when I say things like that. However, comma, let's stick to the story. According to your story, Jesus was not a Christian, and he wasn't. Christianity didn't even exist yet. Matter of fact, the letter J didn't even exist yet. So I don't know how they pull these wolves over our eyes. He was not preaching Christianity according to the allegory. He was a Jew living under Roman occupation. And according to the gospel accounts, the people most threatened by him weren't gang members. They weren't atheists. They weren't sinners. They weren't prostitutes. The people most threatened by him were the youths of that time. Did you say youths, Ty? The youths of that time, the Christians of right now were the people that was threatened. If Adam came from the dust, why do they have the belly buttons? Belly buttons connect us to. They took the feminine presence out of the Trinity. That should be something. These are the questions that we have to ask King Lorenzo. He was beefing with the religious leaders, the youths of that time. So the ones of you that know scripture, who participate in these rituals, like laying hands, what is it that olive oil that you put on your hands and you laying on people and eating that communion? I don't think you understand that you're actually indulging in what they call, what is it called? Eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood. What do they call it? Cannibalism. The real Trinity is mom, grandma, great grandma. The black woman is God, and your only your baptism comes through the mother's womb. Peace, peace, King. Communion, yes, it's communion. Thank you for that. But it's all voodoo and hoodoo. What y'all accusing other people of, that's what it is. It's a ritual. Speaking in tongues. Ritual. We're not even understanding what we're practicing. It's the same thing you're demonizing other people for. So those of you that call yourself knowing tradition and knowing what thus says the law, family, that's important because Jesus didn't get unalive for being nice, feeding people, healing people. He got in trouble. Come on. He got in trouble because he challenged the very system that y'all uphold right now today. Family, let's stop calling him Savior for a minute. So what was the crime, Ty? He started messing with the church's money. He started messing with the church's money. He criticized the religious hypocrisy. He called out the pastors and the lawyers the same way Ty does it today. When she told y'all that tithing was done with forevermore. And that's your Bible says that. That's not me saying that. He was telling them, no, you ain't supposed to be doing that. At that time was fruit and vegetables and produce, and y'all done change it into money. It sure is. It sure is. They have to learn the etymology of these words that they speak, Lorenzo. He disrupted this carrying on that y'all had in the temple. Now, family, that don't sound much like a criminal to me, according to the law, that is. That sounds like somebody making religious people uncomfortable, and they couldn't handle it. And there's a difference. You know what? At this point, as a non-believer, I might be on a mission to even take Jesus from y'all, the sad people. Listen, I don't fault them because it's a behavior that's been learned. It's a behavior. I once was them, so I have empathy for it. Listen, I was just saying that, brother Lorenzo. I was just saying how we have to go back to this text and understand, how can you have all these men all throughout and everywhere and all these women? Nobody got a name. I got to go and look and find these women names. It was because at that time they were looking and this system was created by men that liked men. They believed that the highest form of love was agape love. They believed that boy on boy was the highest love that you can achieve. That's what they believe. So I believe that we need to take that from them, because the Jesus I read about doesn't look like the version that's being preached right now today, because he wouldn't go for it. He stood with the rejected. He challenged those things you call yourself standing on. This is why if it did exist, thank you for sharing that, Mr. I hope I don't butcher your name, J. Sewell 3. I'm sorry if I butchered it. This is why, family, if it did exist, y'all be showing up to the festivities, to the gate, and he gonna tell y'all, I know you not. I don't know if I agree with that, Lorenzo. I don't know about that one. Y'all be playing in Jesus' face too much with bubbles. Think about how crazy that is. And a person gets healed, gets their life back, and the conversation becomes, you weren't supposed to be healing somebody because it's Sunday. Just on that alone, some of y'all guilty. Look, the homie said, if one of you has a sheep, because he challenged y'all, he says, one of you have a sheep and it fall into a pit on the Sabbath. You mean to tell me you're not going to lift it out? That ain't the only time. He also said, which of you will let your son fall in, or your son or your ox fall into a ditch on the Sabbath, and then you will not immediately pull them out? Do y'all see what he doing? What is he doing, Ty? He exposing y'all to be fakes. He's exposing the contradiction. And what I peeped out about y'all is, when it's something y'all value, y'all quick to change the rules. When it's your sheep, you make an exception. When it's your ox, you make an exception. When it's your property, I'll make an exception. But when it's suffering of a human being, of somebody else that you don't quite care for, your neighbor, your brother down the road that you don't care for. Or let me say this. When Brother Johnson gets caught slipping out of Sister Brenda's back door, you want to quote scripture. Thank you. You want to quote scripture, and you won't even call out what the hypocrisy is, because just the other week you were doing the same thing. Y'all be misusing stuff. And I see y'all. Family, I told us at the beginning of the night, this wasn't going to be comfortable. Tonight wasn't about proving who's right. It's about exposing the contradictions. And I believe we've done that. We started with one question: who gets to decide who's dangerous? Because if it was left up to the system, anyone who threatens the system becomes the problem. History shows us that the people who challenge power are the ones put on trial. Jesus was put on trial, not because he was violent, but because he disrupted the status quo. So before you let the system tell you who's dangerous, ask the question: dangerous to who? I used to say all the time, you're tired, you disturbing people's peace. Whose peace? What about my peace? Because sometimes the greatest threat isn't the people, it's the system that profits from keeping people asleep. We should recognize that. And before we leave tonight, I want us to ask some more questions. Did you know who you were at 12? Y'all put it in the chat. Did you know what your purpose was when you were 12 years old? Because in the allegory, Jesus did. He was given the road. He gives us the roadmap of how we can start accessing the Christ within ourselves. The first recorded words out of his mouth weren't miracles. They weren't religion. They weren't about starting a church. I'm going to go and start my church over here. They were about identity. His parents searched for him for 3 days. And what did they find? What did they find him? At the source of the problem, in the church, in the temple, not preaching, not laying hands on people, not hopping on my Honda while I touch somebody on the head. He wasn't doing none of that. He was sitting in the midst of the shit starters. This is what it says. He was sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions in the temple. Family, don't miss that. He wasn't afraid to ask questions. He wasn't afraid to examine. He wasn't afraid to think. He wasn't afraid to engage the very people who claim to know God. He went from them studying the problem. And that's what he did. He went in there. I'm going to ask y'all some questions because I need to know what y'all up to behind these scenes. I need to know, since y'all are the ones that are responsible for giving this information to my people, I need to see what y'all know. I need to see what y'all motives are. And when his parents finally found him, his response was, I was trying to fit in. I put on my good Sunday suit. I wasn't trying to get the Pharisees to approve of me. So I wasn't buttering up to the pastor. It wasn't I was trying to become more religious. He said, "Wence ye not that I must be about my Father's business." That means he had purpose. Family, after everything we've unpacked tonight, I don't believe America's Most Wanted was ever just about one man. I believe it was about what's happening when a people begin to remember who they are. When we begin to remember who they are, because at that time, the righteous as well as the unrighteous was unaliving. D-I-E. Thank you for the gift. It's water and taste. It's water. I'm trying to make good time so I can get off of here. It's water. Just like now, the righteous as well as the unrighteous family is suffering. We are suffering. And that's not okay. Because if I can disconnect you from yourself, I never have to defeat you. If I can convince you that your power is somewhere outside of you, all up and through all of the things that are external, you'll spend your whole life chasing what was already within you. If I can convince you that the kingdom is somewhere else, you'll never exercise your dominion here. And isn't that the contradiction? The text says the kingdom is within you. The text says ye are gods. Yet religion has trained generations of people to look everywhere else except for. Let me ask you something. How can the oppressed, I don't know if this was you, Lorenzo, that mentioned that. How can the oppressed and the oppressor both pray to the same God and both expect opposite outcomes? Whose prayer get answered? Think about the conversation we had about Brother Anthony. They prayed for his conviction. You prayed for his acquittal. Both of you invoked God. Both of you claim to be righteous. Then the verdict comes back guilty. Family Roman says the invisible things are clearly seen by the things that are made. So look at the fruit. Look at the outcomes. Look at what's visible. Then ask yourself, what are those outcomes inviting you to examine? Not to blame, to examine. From the lenses I've been sharing tonight, our ancestors understood something through Ma'at. They understood alignment. They understood relationship with creation. They understood that life is lived in harmony with the natural law. What is natural? It don't have to be performed. The sun doesn't try to shine. The river doesn't try to flow. Life expresses itself according to its nature. And my hypothesis is this: when a people live in harmony with their nature, what is natural to you is interpreted as mystery, threatening, or even supernatural to them. As history has shown us that they fear what they don't understand. What happens psychologically when they come across something greater, something that they cannot control? They study it. They devote their lives to it. They categorize it so they can redefine it. They can learn. And then they create this new narrative around it. Because if I cannot become what you are, I have to define what it looks like. I have to convince you to forget. Perhaps I can convince you to abandon your own story to inherit mine. Ain't that something? I'm going to convince you that all the things that you learned about nature, all the things that work for your body, these fruits and vegetables, us being plant eaters versus carnivores. I'm going to give you this. Black brother, Black sister. Imagine that. Imagine getting the people to adopt a story that makes them afraid of what naturally gives them life. Imagine telling Ra, the bringer of light, heat, rhythm, and life, is dangerous to them. While according to nature, the same light energizes the body, it feeds the plant, it gives vitamin D, it regulates your mood, and it keeps creation moving. Imagine teaching people to fear their own body, then telling them rituals to fix what was never broken to begin with. Imagine teaching people to reject nature, then making them dependent on a system that profits from their disconnection. Imagine teaching people that their power is pride. Their questions are rebellion. Their body is sinful. Their ancestors are demonic. Their land is cursed and their salvation is always somewhere else. Imagine giving a people a story that keeps them waiting while you build. Imagine teaching people to postpone their inheritance while they establish all the dominion. They get all the things right now in the present. Imagine teaching people that everything good is later while you pursue on earth as it is in heaven. But then all of a sudden somebody stands up and starts asking questions and start exposing those contradictions, starts reminding people to know who they are, to know themselves. And the people that's supposed to be your people tell everybody to come from amongst her, come from amongst them. They dangerous. Don't listen. Because he knew the assignment. He knew his assignment. Before the world knew his name. Now let me ask you another question. What happened to us? Y'all answer that for me. What happened to us? At what point did we stop asking questions? At what point did we become afraid to examine? At what point did somebody convince us that curiosity was rebellion, that examination was disrespect, that questioning was the lack of faith? And that's where we lost ourselves. Because when a child stops asking questions, they borrow identities, they borrow beliefs, they borrow opinions until one day they can quote everything they've been taught. They can recall the scripture without even looking in the book to tell it to you, and still not even know who they are. And that's the tragedy. That's tragic. Because the very story people used to tell you not to question begins with a 12-year-old asking questions in a temple. Let that marinate. The first recorded act of Jesus wasn't blind obedience. It was engagement. It was examination. It was dialogue. It was the courage to think, family. What if we become so religious that we've discouraged the very thing that the allegory shows us about your Jesus? What if we taught children to memorize? Imagine that. The governor says, after all that, I find no fault. But the crowd says, which is you of today's time, unalive him, crucify him anyway. Now ask yourself, how different is that from today? What happens when somebody challenges the accepted interpretation? What happens when someone says, read it for yourself, think for yourself, know for yourself? Sometimes the first response is not examination, it's rejection. And don't act like I'm tripping because you did it to me. I know, because I know if Jesus Jr. came back saying anything of the sorts that Ty says, that y'all would crucify him. That's why I've been saying all night, America's Most Wanted should become America's Most Examined. Because he was the example of how y'all can show up and show out. Send it to my inbox, brother, and I'll take a look at it. I'm convinced y'all haven't read it, and y'all refuse to read it. Matter of fact, I know y'all haven't. I know you haven't, because if you did, you may be open to understand. And I'm not saying you have to take everything I say and it's Bible. I'm saying examine it. Even what I say, debunk it with verified information, though, if you're trying to debunk something. But I'm saying is examine it. It's time for us to start being insecure about some of these things that are showing up. Because if we start going back to the basics and understanding what these words mean and looking these up, the origin of these words and what they mean, maybe we can start being more open to understand the thing system fears most is the person who remembers who they are. And if I'm wrong, examine it. If I'm right, examine it. Truth never fears investigation. Ty does not care if you go and look up something she says. And you know what? If there's some truth in it, share it with me. I'm not going to dismiss it or put it now. I'm not just going to take your word for it. I'm going to go and look for myself. That's one thing about Ty. She's going to make sure it connects before she. But family, what if my assignment isn't to make you agree with me? What if my assignment is to wake you up, to wake up part of you and to help you remember who you are? Ye are God's. The kingdom is within you. And it doesn't start with the church. It doesn't start with the government. It doesn't start with the crowd. It starts with you. And I'm going to leave y'all with this. I got to hurry up. I made good time tonight. I got to go use the restroom. So I'm going to leave y'all with this. The greatest prison is forgetting your own nature. The greatest liberation is remembering who you are. Let me say it one more time for the people in the back. The greatest prison is forgetting your own nature. Black man, black woman, forgetting who you are. The greatest liberation is remembering who you are. That's it for me, family. Hotep.